A hush had fallen over Winterfell, not the calm of a keep resting after harvest, but the breathless silence that comes when life itself is afraid to speak. The snows that blanketed the ancient battlements glittered beneath a wan morning sun. Yet the cold felt strange, deeper than mere winter, an echo of something newly born. Jon Snow stood alone atop the eastern rampart, gloved hands resting on frost-silvered stone, eyes fixed on the dead horizon. In the distance he saw only the pale sheet of sky and the ragged stumps of burned siege engines. But in his mind, he still beheld the Night King's gaze, incandescent blue, shattering into 1,000 shards of light beneath the stroke of Longclaw. That moment had felt both endless and impossibly brief. A heartbeat, a sunrise. The shiver before a storm. He exhaled and watched the vapor twist into delicate filaments that drifted, not upward, as breath should, but sideways, as though tugged by a silent wind blowing from realms unseen. The air tasted sharp, crystalline, like water drawn from beneath a glacier. He tried to swallow the sensation, to push it down with all the other unspoken things crowding his chest. Yet it lingered, humming beneath his skin. A sliver of dread pricked him, not fear of the dead, for they were ash and shards now, but fear of the unknown gift that killing them had left behind. In the yard below, men broke the crusted snow, raking away half-burned corpses and shattered weapons. Survivors moved with weary deliberation, as though every step had to be negotiated with memories of last night's terror. Ghost padded among them, nose low, crimson eyes wary. The great dire wolf paused, lifted his head, and stared directly at Jon on the wall. For an instant, the beast's hackles rose, then smoothed again, confusion replacing fear. Jon felt it too, a ripple of something unnatural circling him like invisible rings spreading from a stone dropped in a still pond. He touched Longclaw's hilt. The Valyrian steel no longer radiated the comfortable chill he had come to know. Instead, the pommel's direwolf seemed warm, almost feverish. He jerked his hand away, flexing fingers that tingled as if ice had burned them. Every sword sings a song when it moves through air, the old master-at-arms had once told him. Now Jon heard not a song, but a chord struck on unseen bells, resonant, lingering, and threaded with distant voices whose language he did not understand. Footsteps sounded behind him, light, sure, and familiar. He did not turn. "You shouldn't be alone," Arya said, her voice roughened by hours without rest. She smelled of smoke and sweat and blood. But beneath that, Jon sensed something else, the unmistakable scent of the living. To his dismay, it made his stomach clench with hunger he had never known. "I needed the air," he murmured, forcing his gaze away from Arya's pulse beating faintly in her throat. He curled gloved fingers into a fist until leather creaked. Arya joined him at the parapet. Her gray eyes swept the field where white flakes drifted down onto blackened bones. "They'll sing about last night for 1,000 years," she said, though her tone carried no triumph. "But I doubt the songs will tell how much it stank." Jon managed a faint smile. Songs never do. A silence followed, not the easy quiet they once shared beneath the heart tree, but something taut. Arya's hand brushed his forearm, fingers swift as a sparrow darting for crumbs. She frowned. "Your sleeve is cold, colder than the wall even." He glanced down. Frost feathered the leather where her touch had fallen, delicate as lace. She stepped back, a shadow of alarm flitting across her face. "Jon?" He shook his head. "I'm fine." The lie rang brittle. A gust from the north slid over the battlements, swirling his cloak, and the needles of the Winterfell pines below rattled in unison, a sound like distant applause, or like bones chattering in approval. Arya's keen eyes narrowed. "Did something happen when you killed him?" "Something beyond the blade. I don't know." He wished that were true. In the moment Longclaw pierced the Night King's chest, Jon had felt a torrent rush into him. Ice and moonlight, screams swallowed by ages, the weight of loneliness vast enough to drown a world. He had expected to be frozen solid, but instead the power settled inside him like coals banking beneath ash, ready to flare at a breath. Arya studied him. "You should speak to Bran." Jon nodded, though dread pooled low in his gut. Bran, the boy who was now more Raven than Stark, would see truths Jon feared to name. The solar smelled of parchment, beeswax, and the faint musk of grass carried in on Bran's chair wheels. Sunlight fell in slanted bars across the stone floor. Yet where Bran sat, the shadows seemed longer than elsewhere, as though they bent toward him seeking counsel. He waited, unmoving, pale hands folded in his lap, eyes cloud blue and bottomless. Sansa stood near the hearth, arms wrapped around herself. Her red hair had come free of its pins, and soot smudged one cheek, but her posture was unbowed. When Jon entered, she lifted her gaze to meet his, and for the first time since he had first called her his sister again outside Castle Black, he saw genuine uncertainty there. Bran spoke first. "Close the door, please." His voice was a whisper of wings. Jon obeyed, the latch clicking shut, sealing the room in quiet. He faced Bran, feeling as though he knelt again before Mormont's carved bear waiting for judgment. "You carry it," Bran said. No question, only statement. Jon swallowed. "Carry what?" "The heart of winter." Sansa exhaled sharply as though struck. "Bran, speak plainly." Bran turned his head toward her. When the Night King fell, his essence needed a vessel. Jon was the instrument of his death. The force that animated him passed into the nearest open wound in the world. Jon's wound. Jon's hand went to his chest, where forgotten bruises throbbed beneath wool. "Can it be removed?" "No." Bran's eyes flicked to the ravens perched along Winterfell's roofline outside the narrow window. "It can only be mastered, or it will master you." A memory surfaced. The Night King raising his arms on Hardhome's pier, silent command rippling over the dead. Jon's stomach cramped. "I won't become him." "That depends on choice," Bran said. "And time." Sansa stepped forward. "What can we do?" Bran's lips tensed, an almost human sadness. "We watch. We remind him who he is." Jon clenched his jaw. "I know who I am." Bran's gaze fixed him. "Do you? Or do you know only who you were?" "Da." The word struck like a mailed fist. Jon felt heat flare beneath his breastbone, contradiction to the cold, sleek power coiled there. A pane of frost blossomed across the window behind Bran, cracking softly. Sansa flinched. Jon turned away, breath ragged. That night, the godswood sighed beneath heavy snow. Jon stood before the heart tree, red leaves limp as blood-soaked cloth against skeleton branches. The carved face watched him with blind, weeping eyes. He used to draw comfort here, kneeling in quiet prayer. Now he feared kneeling lest the earth freeze behind his knees and tether him forever. He unsheathed Longclaw. The blade reflected torchlight in ripples of dark smoke. "What am I becoming?" he whispered. The flame nearest him guttered. Blue tongues licked the reed twine, devouring it quicker than any ordinary firewood. A thin cracking sounded. He looked down. Frost crawled along the roots at his feet, spider webbing outward until every fallen leaf bore a crest of white. He sheathed Longclaw with trembling fingers. The frost halted. From the gloom stepped Samwell Tarly, bundled in a patched cloak, cheeks ruddy dyed. He panted, having jogged across the bailey in drifts up to his calves. "Jon Host led me here." Indeed, the direwolf lingered behind Sam, tail low, ears flattened. Sam's glance swept the white-rimmed clearing. The godswood wasn't frozen like this earlier. Jon pressed a forearm against the heart tree's rough bark, grounding himself. "I did it without meaning to." Sam took a careful step closer, breath clouding his spectacles. "I've been thinking about what happened. When you killed the Night King, you didn't burn him, didn't use dragon glass. You used Valyrian steel imbued with you. Your blood, your heat." He paused, gaze bright despite fear. Perhaps the magic latched onto that spark of life and fused with it. Jon managed a grim smile. "A spark of life? Some days I feel more dead than the whites we burned." Sam's expression softened. Life is stubborn. Remember what Maester Eamon used to say, kill the boy so the man may live. Maybe you must kill something else now, this cold inside, to let the man endure. Jon lifted his hand. Frost filmed his glove again. If only I knew how. Sam hesitated, then reached into his satchel. He withdrew a thick tome bound in cracking leather. Asshai texts. Translations by archmeisters who half believe their own words. But one passage describes an ancient ritual where light tempered darkness within a living vessel. It speaks of binding oneself to fire and flesh. Dragon fire? Jon guessed, heart pounding. Sam nodded. Perhaps Rhaegal. Jon cut him off. Rhaegal is wounded, and I'd sooner slit my own throat than make him my forge. Sam blinked, but steadied. We'll find another way. Jon wanted to believe him. The heart tree creaked above, branches shedding flakes that spiraled down like quiet accusations. Jon closed his eyes. He pictured the Night King's final moment. That alien face slackened not in fear but in resignation, as if handing off a burden long carried. Jon's stomach churned. Over the next days, Winterfell's inhabitants learned to interpret the deepening chill as they might the creak of timbers in a ship's hull. A warning. When Jon's footsteps crossed a corridor, candles guttered and trailed sparks. When he trained with soldiers, steel rang not just with impact but with a low, bell-like reverberation that left throats dry. Children hushed when he passed, dogs whimpered and retreated. Yet, there were glimmers of something else. A burst dam was cleared of ice in minutes when Jon's frustration broke its banks, sparing hours of labor. A dying woman ravaged by fever found sudden relief when Jon laid a hand on her brow. The heat siphoned away as if drawn through a leech, leaving her cheeks cool and her pulse steady. Jon kept such acts secret, but rumors spread like birds scattering from corn. At dusk one evening, Tyrion Lannister arrived with a handful of surviving Unsullied. Daenerys astride a litter strung between poles. Rhaegal limped overhead, one wing trailing torn membranes that flapped like tattered banners. The courtyard erupted in cheers and sobs. Jon emerged from the great hall to greet them. Heart thunderous. He had feared Daenerys dead beyond the walls. The dragon's green shadow crossed him, but Rhaegal's roar faltered mid-cry, pain twisting it to a groan. Daenerys descended, hair matted, but her violet eyes alight at sight of Jon. She reached for him, he caught her hands. A shock passed between them, frost blooming across her silver rings. She snatched her fingers back, eyes wide. He saw comprehension flicker, fire meeting ice. "You feel it," she whispered. He nodded. She studied his face as though searching for a map of the future hidden beneath the scars. Around them, soldiers whispered, and Rhaegal's damaged wing beat weakly, stirring eddies of snow. Jon sensed the beast's agony like a splinter in his own flesh. The urge to mend, to knit torn sinew with cold fire, swelled within him. He stepped toward Rhaegal. Daenerys touched his forearm. "Wait." Jon glanced at her. She shook her head. "Not yet. The others mustn't see what you can do until we know the cost." He met her gaze, stunned by the unspoken alliance. For the first time since the power had taken root, he felt less alone. That night he visited Rhaegal in the smoldering ruins of the stables, repurposed for the dragon. Chains no longer bound the green beast. Brute exhaustion and blood loss sufficed. Jon approached slowly. The dragon lifted its head, eyes glowing amber in the torchlight. Steam curled from nostrils, limned with flecks of crimson as it struggled to breathe. Jon laid a hand on the ridged snout. Frost spread beneath his palm, yet the dragon did not flinch. Within Jon, cold surged, seeking outlet. He guided it carefully, imagining tendons knitting, bone fusing, membrane sealing like ice across a pond. The air crackled. Rhaegal shuddered and exhaled a plume of blue-tinged vapor that rhymed straw to glass. Jon swayed but held, chanting nothing, merely willing. Minutes later, he staggered back. The dragon flexed its wing. The tear had shrunk, edges sealed by a thin translucent skin. Rhaegal's eyes fixed Jon with something akin to gratitude, or warning. Ghost growled softly behind him. Footsteps approached. Daenerys. She stopped beside Jon. gaze darting from the frost-coated straw to the mending wound. "You saved him." "I tried." She touched his cheek, fingers trembling against the cold radiating from his skin. "At what cost to you?" He shrugged. "I feel drained, but alive." Her eyes glistened. "Then we'll bear the cost together." She leaned in, lips nearly brushing his. For a heartbeat, the cold within retreated, replaced by an aching warmth. Then a crack sounded, ice forming on the tears at Rhaegal's side as the dragon's breath froze. Jon broke away, guilt slicing deep. "I should go," he said. She nodded, sorrow and determination warring in her eyes. "Tomorrow we'll speak with Tyrion. Winterfell must learn the truth before rumor twists it into fear." Jon looked toward the keep, windows aglow. In one, Bran's silhouette sat still as stone. Jon wondered what futures the three-eyed raven watched unfurl tonight. Creaking banners lined the great hall when Jon entered with Daenerys at midday. Lords clustered around hearths. Glover, Manderley, Royce, even young Lady Stoneheart of the Riverlands, stern beneath her hood. The halls smelled of broth and pine pitch and unease. Tyrion rose from a low bench and cleared his throat. "My lords and ladies." The dwarf began, voice echoing. "You know the dead have fallen, but not how." Murmurs swelled. Tyrion raised a small hand to Jon. "The king in the north ended the Night King's reign by his own blade." Cheer flickered, dampened by tension. Tyrion continued, words measured. Yet victory came with a consequence. "Magic, like wildfire, does not vanish. It changes form. Some of the Night King's power has fused with our king." Silence crashed down. Lady Lyanna Mormont, bandaged but defiantly upright, snorted. "Ain, taught pull." Jon stepped forward, letting them see the frost shimmering beneath his cuffs. Gasps rose. He drew Longclaw. Frost steamed along its length, though fires roared nearby. He set the point to the stone floor. Frost spread in hairline veins, but only a foot circle, control. "I have ice in my blood," he said. "I did not ask for it, but I will wield it for the living." Lord Glover crossed arms. "And if it wields you?" Jon met his stare. "Then I beg you to end me before that happens." Sansa rose. "We shall not need to. We will stand with him, and we will find balance, because the North has always balance between burning summer and endless winter." She stepped aside Jon, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder, a sister's claim. Arya mirrored her on the other side, eyes shadowed but steady. Bran sat at the hall's end, expression unreadable. A subtle nod passed from him to Jon, as though threads unseen had tightened momentarily. The hall held its breath. Then Lord Royce lowered his head. "Very well. We stand with our king, and with the queen who rides dragons." His gaze flicked to Daenerys. One by one the lords murmured assent, though fear lingered in their eyes. Jon sheathed Longclaw, heart hammering. He felt the cold withdraw slightly, as if soothed by acceptance. That night, he dreamt of an endless plain of black ice, stretching to a horizon without dawn. In the center stood a solitary figure, tall, naked, skin pale as new snow. Its eyes were his own. Between them hung a sword of shadow, point down, frozen into the ice. Voices murmured around him, indistinct, lamenting or coaxing. He reached for the sword. The figure mirrored him. Their hands met upon the hilt. A surge of power split the dream open. He woke sweating despite the chill, pulse drumming. In the dark chamber, frost traced spirals across the bedposts. He dressed and slipped out, seeking fresh air. The corridor lay silent, save for torches crackling. He noticed the flames leaning toward him, as if drawn. Outside, moonlight limned Winterfell in silver. Snowflakes fell, glittering like motes of frozen starlight. Jon crossed the bailey, boots crunching softly. Near the new forge, he paused. Sparks rose from a chimney, but as they drifted toward him, they cooled mid-air, tumbling down as ash onto his shoulders. He brushed them off, heart aching. Behind him, iron rang. Gendry hammering late despite the hour. Jon approached. The Baratheon bastard glanced up, sweat steaming. Can't sleep either? Jon shook his head. What do you forge? Gendry held up a half-finished axe head of dragonglass, edged with Valyrian steel. Something fit for a king who was half-winter himself. Jon studied the metal. Frost hissed against its surface where his breath touched it. I'm not sure a weapon can fix what's wrong with me. Gendry grinned. Maybe it can fix what's wrong around you. If winter obeys your call, shape it, don't fear it. Jon considered that. Could the cold be wielded like any sword? A distant memory stirred. Benjen teaching him to ride, saying, Night's Watch uses the cold. It sharpens the senses. If Jon sharpened this power, perhaps he could carve new paths through old darknesses. He thanked Gendry and left, mind churning. Dawn crept pale behind leaden clouds. Jon, Daenerys, and Bran gathered at the battlements. Rhaegal circled above, wing beats stronger. Bran's voice drifted on the wind. North of the wall, remnants of the dead still wander masterless. They drift toward a place of old power, Iham, where the first others were forged. Daenerys' brow knit. Pipe. If they coalesce, another Night King could rise. Jon nodded. Then I must go there. She seized his hand, warmth against cold. Not alone. Jon squeezed gently. I fear what I'll do if the power grows unchecked, but facing it may be the only way to master it. Bran's chair creaked as he turned. In Ishaholm lies the heart of the weeping glacier. If you break it, the magic binding death to ice may splinter forever. Or it may bind you utterly. I cannot see which. Jon inhaled the biting air. Destiny stretched before him like the snow-clad forest, beautiful, lethal, and unknown. Yet he felt a steadying resolve, ice yet unfractured beneath heavy boots. He would tread carefully, but he would tread on. 5 days later, preparations hummed through Winterfell. Supplies were loaded onto sledges. Ravens dispatched. Tormund Giantsbane arrived with a host of free folk, laughter booming through the yards. He clasped Jon by forearms, eyes widening at the chill. You always were too bloody serious, Crow. Now you're colder than my ex-wife. Jon managed to laugh. I've missed you too. Tormund's gaze softened. If you're marching into the heart of ice, the free folk march with you. We know the songs of that land, even the ones never sung aloud. Mender. Through such camaraderie, Jon felt the cold ease, as though friendship warmed stone deep inside. Yet each night the dream returned. The figure on the black ice, the shared sword, the murmuring voices edging closer. Sam approached one evening with parchment inked in tight Valyrian script. I found mention of the Iceholm ritual. Fire and flesh, yes, but also memory. The vessel must anchor itself by speaking aloud every name it loves, lest those names freeze and shatter. Jon raised brows. I can do that. Sam smiled sadly. It will hurt. Jon accepted that truth like another scar. On the eve of departure, Jon stood again before the heart tree. Snow drifted thick, muffling the world. He spoke names into the hush. Eddard, Catelyn, Robb, Rickon, Benjen, Maester Aemon, Ygritte. His voice cracked. Lyanna. The wind carried the names upward, and frost receded beneath his boots, as though the old gods themselves bowed. He breathed on. Arya. Sansa. Bran. The branches ceaselessly sighed. He felt the cold settle, not as a predator, but as armor tightening around his heart. He laid a hand on the trunk, whispering, I am Jon Snow. I am of the north and of the night, but I choose the living. The godswood answered with silence, yet he sensed a pulse within the tree, slow and ancient. When he turned to leave, Ghost trotted at his heel, white beside white, faithful shadow, in a land bleaching toward memory. Jon rested a hand on the direwolf's head. The fur felt cool, but not unnaturally so. For the first time in days, Jon's smile reached his eyes. The journey awaited. Icaholm's shattered towers, legends buried in blue fire. And beyond, a fate neither sung nor foretold, writing itself in each breath he took. Jon squared his shoulders and stepped into the snow-bright dark, where dawn waited to be carved from the heart of winter. Okay. They left Winterfell before dawn, slipping into a hush so absolute that even the ravens fell silent among the branches. First went the vanguard, Tormund Giantsbane and a dozen free folk scouts on shaggy Garrons, their breath rising in clouds that caught the faintest promise of sunrise. The rest trailed behind in tight columns, Knights of the Vale in blue-white cloaks, northern spearmen in patched leathers, Unsullied whose bronze-tipped rifles of dragonglass gleamed black against snow, and at their heart the strange pair who had remade every tale the North would ever tell. A queen who commanded fire, and a king who held winter in the marrow of his bones. Jon rode Ghost rather than a horse, for the direwolf's lope eclipsed even the sure-footed northern mounts, and no stallion willingly bore the cold that spilled from Jon's skin. Daenerys kept pace on a glossy black courser she had named Shadowflame. Gift from Lord Royce, bred for hard ground and colder nights. Rhaegal wheeled overhead, a green shadow drifting between violet slabs of pre-dawn cloud. With every beat of his mending wings, snow devils whirled across the frozen flats. They followed the King's Road only until the great white ribbon bent west toward the abandoned castles of the Night's Watch. Then Tormund veered north-northeast, plunging into trackless tundra, where the last spruce fingers reached like pleading hands toward the sky. Before surrendering to endless rock and ice, Jon felt the land change beneath his feet. The squeak of new snow dampened, becoming a brittle crunch that rang like glass shattered underfoot. He breathed and sensed flickers of power humming in the air. Some currents welcomed him like kin returning. Others recoiled and hissed through stone fissures, wary and hungry. The column advanced no more than 10 miles that first day, slowed by the need to hack steps down gullied slopes, to ford rivers glazed in treacherous black ice, and to circle half-buried ruins of villages whose roofs caved like broken ribs. Twice they found bodies. One a woman still clutching a wooden doll, face frozen in the forever wonder of a child's toy. The other an old man whose beard bristled with icicles. Neither corpse bore the blue hue or crystalline eyes of the whites, yet the dead seemed newly claimed by a cold so deep it polished their skin like marble. At dusk they made camp under a splintered tor. Fires dotted the valley floor, tiny halos of amber in a blue wilderness. The Unsullied erected a ring of dragonglass stakes, while northern sentries paced with crossbows, arrows tipped in obsidian. Only Jon stood beyond the perimeter, alone beneath the tor's jagged shadow, working to breathe steady. The moment his boots crunched to a halt, the fires closest to him faltered. Only Daenerys' own remained, a stubborn column of heat rising beside her tent. She emerged wrapped in wolf fur, silver hair unbound, cheeks flushed from wind. Jon turned at the faint shift of snow behind him and half smiled. "You should stay warm." Her breath drifted white in the coming dark. "I am." She closed the distance until their cloaks brushed. "You, however, look half-starved." "I'm fine." He meant to sound firm. It came out weary. The road's magic had gnawed at him all day, pulling threads from the knot he'd tied so carefully inside his chest. Daenerys' gloved fingers found the seam of his cuirass. "Ghost watched you skip 2 meals." She tipped her head, a queen studying a reluctant soldier. "And 3 times I saw your eyes shift." She hesitated, searching for words that would not draw blood. Shift toward the scouts as though they were prey. Jon tasted the word on the back of his tongue, bitter as iron. "It passes." A breath? A heartbeat? Nothing more. A breath can be enough for hunger to bloom. His throat worked. "I know." He lifted her hand to his lips, the cold of his skin frosting her glove. "That is why I need you near. You remind me what warmth feels like." She did not flinch though rime dusted her knuckles. "Then remember, we walk beside you." She glanced over her shoulder at the huddled fires. "We all do." The second dawn broke, a pink blade slashing low clouds. They pressed on into the ice mark, an ancient battlefield strewn with mounds said to cover first men and giants alike. Tormund told stories as they rode, of Harma Dogshead's last stand, of Mag the mighty roaring defiance as knights toppled from his club like fleas, of kings who challenged the snows and vanished beneath them. Each tale ended in laughter that echoed across wide flats. Until mid-morning, when the wind shifted and carried whispers instead. John felt them first. Spider-fine threads brushing his thoughts, voices from no human throat. He reined Ghost to a halt. The direwolf growled, hackles bristling. Ahead, the scouts slowed. Snow drifted through still air, as though falling in a dream. Daenerys spurred Shadowflame beside him. "What do you hear?" "Nothing," John answered, yet his heart pounded. Too much nothing. The hush pressed against eardrums, smothering hoofbeats. Even the creak of saddle leather faded, until only the rasp of breath remained. And beneath it, a hollow drone. Like wind blown across the mouth of a deep bottle. Sam, riding a fat Garen further back, fumbled at his satchel for a horn of glass he'd filled with powdered weirwood bark. "The text warned about this," he called, voice thin. "Eschaham's call can unmake sound. If it deepens, we might lose speech entirely." John lifted a hand, signaling halt. Soldiers exchanged wary glances as the hush thickened, muffling the scrape of steel on scabbard. Snowflakes now drifted upward as often as downward, caught in invisible eddies that threaded among men's cloaks. John felt his power coil, eager to surge. He breathed, summoning the litany of names. Ned, Caitlin, Rob, Ite, Arya, Sansa, Bran. The tension eased. Flakes resumed their natural fall. A slow mutter rippled down the line when the world sound returned. Not all at once but in shards, as though through cracks in a broken wall. First came the creak of an axle, then the jingle of reins, then Tyrion's unmistakable curse as he slammed a finger in a cart latch. Laughter sputtered. Relief blossomed in tight chests. John exhaled. He turned to Daenerys, meaning to reassure her, and found Ghost staring north, ears flat. The direwolf's eyes flared crimson. Over the next rise a shape emerged, smoke gray against white, massive, moving with a fluidity that belied its size. At first, John thought it a remnant giant, until he saw the wings. A wyvern. Sam's voice quavered behind him. But wyverns were lean desert creatures of Lysene legend, small as ponies. This beast spanned 30 yards, scale plates luminous like shattered moonlight. Its wings ended in cruel claws, and its head bore a crest of ice that glittered blue. Daenerys' jaw tightened. "It's no beast of fire." "No," John agreed. "It's winterborn." The creature slowed atop the ridge, enormous chest expanding as it sucked air. When it exhaled, frost crystals rained in a conical burst that turned wind-blown snow to glass shrapnel. Several horses screamed as shards sliced flanks. Unsullied raised spears. Northern archers knocked obsidian shafts. John thrust an arm sideways. "Hold." The wyvern studied them with eyes like polished ice. Rhaegal screamed overhead and Dove. Green flame roared. A billow of emerald that struck the wyvern's wing. Where Rhaegal's fire touched, snow vaporized. Yet the wyvern barely flinched. Instead, frost blossomed across singed scales, sealing damage faster than any wound John had closed on Rhaegal days earlier. The beast's gaze fixed on John. He felt the weight of its magic. Ancient, cold, curious. It prowled forward, each step cracking permafrost in thunderous tremors. Tormund hefted a dragon-glass-tipped harpoon. Say the word, crow. John's heart hammered. The creature felt familiar, as if called by the same force that stirred within him. He swung down from Ghost, stepping onto packed snow. The cold that usually trailed him rushed outward, meeting and mingling with the wyvern's aura, until the air hummed. He raised his voice. "I am Jon of House Stark, chosen of the living. If you seek a master, I won't wear that crown." He drew Longclaw. Frost traced its fuller in glowing runes. The wyvern stopped yards away, nose level with Jon's chest. Its breath smelled of limestone caverns and deep time. Slowly, it lowered its horned head, crest dipping in what might have been obeisance. Then it spread its wings wide and roared, a shattering cry that sent snow exploding outward. Jon felt something loosen, an acceptance not of dominion, but kinship. The beast's magic twined about his own, testing, tasting, and drew back satisfied. Behind Jon, Tormund exhaled. "Looks like you just made a friend." Jon sheathed Longclaw, pulse racing. He extended a cautious hand. The wyvern's nose was cold as glacier ice, yet where his fingers touched, frost receded in delicate whorls that revealed pale blue scales beneath. Daenerys walked forward, Rhaegal circling above. She raised a hand in greeting. The wyvern's eyes flicked to her and narrowed. Snow gusted off its wings, but it did not strike. Instead it turned, lumbered to the ridge, and thrust into the sky with astonishing grace. In 4 beats, it vanished into low clouds. Sam let out a strangled laugh. The Eshai codices spoke of iceworms, dragons forged of pure winter. They were said to answer only to the Night King. "Oh. Or what replaced him," Tyrion said dryly, nudging his pony closer. He eyed Jon. "Still think you're only a man, my friend." Jon met his gaze, fighting unease. "Man enough to wish I weren't part iceworm." He turned away before doubt could root. They resumed the march in wary quiet. Snow thickened, swirling between flurries and near blizzards. By midday the world had narrowed to walls of white. Only those at the very front could see more than a dozen paces. Tormund raised a horn and sounded 2 blasts to close ranks. Jon could hardly hear the deep note over the whisper of swirling snow. Yet he felt its vibration travel through the ground, an echo overlapping some subterranean cadence older than drums. Later, the storm blinded them entirely. Horses balked, wagons mired. The Unsullied formed squares as if bracing against cavalry, shields locking above to roof the living. Jon dismounted and walked the lines, frost hallowing him in a feeble globe of visibility. Soldiers and free folk huddled close. Where their shoulders brushed Jon's cloak, ice cracked, releasing faint pops that sounded like twigs breaking. The storm lasted hours. When it finally lifted near dusk, the army stood on the lip of a basin vast as Blackwater Bay. Within the bowl crouched a forest of ice spires, frozen geysers reaching skyward in glimmering twists. Between them lay fissures emitting bluish steam. The spires stretched miles, converging toward a solitary tower of black basalt that stabbed the horizon like a spear. Bran had named it Icehome. Many recoiled at the sight. The Vale Knights crossed themselves in the faith sigil. Free folk spat toward spirits. Even Daenerys whispered a Valyrian prayer. Jon's power pulsed, throbbing in tune with the basalt tower, as though a heartbeat slumbered in its stone. He forced his shoulders straight. "We make camp here," he ordered. "No fires inside the basin until dawn. Those spires may fall as easily as they rise." Tyrion huffed into his beard. "You mean dawn if dawn still exists in this god's forsaken latitude." Jon almost smiled. Then at whatever light passes for morning, night came hollow and stagnant. No wind stirred across the basin. Even the stars seemed farther away, as though reluctant to look upon this forgotten fane. Jon walked perimeter watch alone, Longclaw drawn for warmth's sake as much as defense. The runes etched by frost earlier now glimmered faintly, casting ghost blue lines across the snow. He'd planned to complete one circuit and return to Daenerys' tent. Instead, his feet led him downslope toward the frozen spires. Before sense or caution regained hold, he was threading labyrinthine corridors of crystal. Moonlight refracted in kaleidoscopes, spawning duplicates of himself that glided alongside, each pallid, fierce, silent. When he breathed, their mouths breathed. When his heart beat, the ice underfoot thrummed. Ahead, a fissure yawned wide, a chasm descending into sapphire gloom. Within pulsed a glow like distant auroras. Jon crouched at the edge. Vapor rose, swirling across his boots. He extended Longclaw into the steam. The blade sang, a note so pure it grew visible, a silver filament dancing from steel to stone. Jon saw shapes in the glow, hooded figures kneeling, arms uplifted toward an unseen throne. He leaned closer, and a hand of blue glass burst from the fog, seizing his wrist. Cold knifed his artery, racing up his arm. He jerked back, but the grip tightened, wrist bones grinding. Another hand emerged, gripping Longclaw's hilt, seeking to wrest it away. Joan's vision blurred. Inside his skull, the Night King's final gaze reignited. With a snarl, he thrust his free palm toward the fissure. Power surged like a river freed of ice. A plume of frost erupted, sheathing the blue arms, cracking each like glass hammered by a smith. Shards tinkled down the chasm. Jon staggered clear, breathing hard. The fissure's glow guttered, extinguished. Silence rushed in behind it, almost mocking. But the hush had changed. Where once it carried hunger, now it carried anticipation. Like a beast measuring its hunter, he turned back through the maze, heart raging. In the lean corridors he saw no imitations. They had scattered. Only his own lone shadow walked beside him, lengthened infinite by moonlight. Daenerys met him halfway up the slope. Her face was bare to the cold, eyes flashing with parted worry and wrath. "I woke, and you were gone. I'm here." He offered a smile. It trembled. She frowned at the rim of frost edging his jaw. "You ventured into the spires." He nodded. "Something reached for me." He flexed reddened fingers. "Something that wears the Night King's memory like armor." She touched his wrist. Her warmth soothed the ache left by the glass claws. "Did it take anything?" "No." He hesitated. "But it knows I'm coming." He drew a deep breath. "And it fears me." They returned to camp, where Bran awaited in a wicker sledge, pulled by 2 direwolves, sent by the children of the woods near the Wolfswood. His pale eyes regarded Jon. "The glacier heart you seek lies beneath that tower's roots," he said. Voice dream-washed. A seed of black ice where the first shard of the long night was planted. "You cracked its shell tonight." Jon rubbed his wrist. "They tried to pull me in. They will try again. And again." Bran's gaze flicked to Daenerys, to Rhaegal slumbering beyond the ridge. "When the heart breaks, it will birth a storm vast enough to drown the north. Only a living vortex can swallow it." Daenerys shook her head. "You mean Jon must absorb even more?" Bran's stare was weightless and crushing. "Or he must channel it elsewhere." Jon thought of the wyvern, of the cold flames knitting Rhaegal's wing. "Into ice worms, into sky, into the memory of what makes you human," Bran whispered. "Every name you hold will root you. Speak them when the storm breaks, or be blown hollow." Jon nodded, resolve hardening. "Then I'll carve those names into my breath." Morning arrived colorless. The basin spires seemed to lean inward, forming ranks of translucent soldiers, saluting their black tower commander. The column advanced single file, each footfall ringing. Frost-dusted eyelashes and turned breath to beads that clung like pearls to beards. Rhaegal glided overhead, wary mutters trailing him. Dragons rarely flew this low in so confined a labyrinth. Yet the beast would not leave Jon's sight. A pact bound them now. Forged when Jon's frost joined a dragon's flame. At the tower's base loomed a gate, no doors, just a gaping wedge carved by eons of meltwater and refreeze. Darkness pooled inside like tar. Jon passed beneath a rim of ice so clear it magnified his reflection. Pale cheeks, coal hair, eyes rimmed in silver like moonlit wolves. He carried a torch anyway, though the flame bent away from him, reluctant. The interior comprised stepped galleries spiraling downward, walls chiseled into reliefs long eroded. Yet some shapes endured. Shadowy figures with spiked crowns. A child's outline strung with vines. A woman, ablaze, and a man encased in ice, hands linked. Jon traced the last carving. Tiny motes of frost lifted beneath his touch, drifting upward like sparks reversed. Sam described antechambers from his Asshai Codex, places where cold and heat met to birth new metals. They sought one chamber in particular, the Cradle of Sighs where the glacier's heart beat loudest. Bran guided them, voice echoing through the stairwell. "Third gallery left, 9th arch. Follow the sound of your own blood slowing." His eyes remained clouded. He saw what none could. Most soldiers remained above with Tyrion. Only Jon, Daenerys, Sam, Gendry, Arya, and 2 unsullied bodyguards, descended with Bran's sledge. Arya's steps were cat-silent. Her gaze flicked from carvework to darkness, never still. Gendry carried a chest of tools, breath steaming. Sam clutched books, parchment scraps fluttering. The air grew colder than any night outside. Torches dimmed to pinpoints. Frost-filmed lashes. Every breath sounded like cracked glass. Yet Jon felt alive, every capillary singing. The cold inside him recognized its origin in the stone, like river meeting source. Finally the stairs spat them into a cavern lit by its own heart. A floating shard of jet-black ice 10 feet wide, suspended over a chasm by slow eddies of blue flame. Each lick of fire seemed caught in time, neither rising nor falling. Beneath the shard's mirrored surface flowed veins of cobalt light, pulsing, as though through arteries. The shard's edges melted and refroze in perpetual dance, ice tears sliding upward before falling again. Sam whispered, "The heart." His voice cracked. He opened a parchment. The ritual speaks of 3 trials: memory, flesh, and breath. Each demands sacrifice. Jon stared at the shard. Heat emanated from the blue flames, yet his skin prickled with frost. What sacrifices? Memory demands truth spoken aloud. Sam rayed. Flesh demands the union of fire and ice. Gendry glanced at Daenerys, then at Jon. We have both of those. And breath? Arya twirled a dragonglass dagger. Sam's fingers trembled on the parchment. The shard must be shattered by a living storm. The vessel's breath unleashed in a single exhalation, after which the storm turns inward, forging new life or extinguishing old. Daenerys laid a palm on Jon's chest. And if it extinguishes, then I die, Jon said gently. He looked around the cavern's frost-spangled gloom. Better me than all beyond this heart. She seized his cloak, eyes fierce. We didn't come this far for martyrdom. He smiled. I came to live, but only if living means our people endure. Bran's voice drifted. Time unspools. His pupils vanished behind lids. The dead gather outside. The wyvern returns with them. Jon heard distant rumbles. Stone cracking, ice shifting as armies coalesced in the basin above. The dead had never needed gates. Snow was their highway and silence their banner. Arya squared shoulders. We'll hold them. Gendry hefted hammer. Till the last. The Unsullied snapped spearbutts on ice in salute. Daenerys turned to Rhaegal, crouched at the cavern's mouth where the tunnels widened. She spoke in High Valyrian, voice echoing like bell chimes. Rhaegal's throat rumbled. Green fire leaked between fangs. Jon inhaled. Memory first. He stepped before the shard. Its reflection showed him younger, Castle Black's uncertain boy, battered and unsure. He spoke. Jon Snow, son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. His voice steadied. Raised by Eddard Stark. Brother to Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon Dotwall. Friend to Samwell Tarly. Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Lover of Ygritte. Partner to Daenerys, Stormborn. Father to none, though ghost runs beside me as brother. Each name echoed, snapping like green pine in hearthfire. The shard's veins brightened, pulses quickening. He went on, spilling memories he hadn't voiced even to himself. The shame of Ygritte's dying gasp, the terror after Ollie's knife slid between ribs, the disbelief when Lyanna Mormont named him king in the north, the guilt at leaving Daenerys lonely in Dragonstone's halls, the warm rush of her mouth on his as snow swirled outside the broken battlements. With each confession the shard glowed brighter, yet Jon felt lighter, as though the weight of decades bled into the ice. When words failed he reached within the cold core, letting it rise in a single name he had never uttered aloud. Aegon? Its syllables shattered the hush. The shard flashed, veins blazing gold, before subduing to deep azure. Memory accepted. Now flesh. Jon turned to Rhaegal and Daenerys. The dragon eased forward, shoulders scraping walls. Frost crawled the shale where his talons touched. Yet as Rhaegal exhaled, the flame was not the emerald of dragonfire, but a twilight blue. Half fire, half ice. Jon raised his hand. The flame bathed him without searing or freezing, coalescing around his arm like living silk. He pushed the flame into the shard. A thunder crack rippled. Hairline fractures spidered across the ice. Flesh accepted. Breath remained. John's lungs expanded. Every alveolus tingled with silver frost. He felt power swirl, gather. Wind of mountain peaks, roar of winter storms, hush of forests buried under snow. He pictured Arya dancing between trees. He pictured Daenerys' laughter spinning across a warm sea. All their voices spiraled inside the storm that coalesced in his throat. Outside, the rumble of the dead approached, but Jon heard only the swell within. He inhaled once more, deeper than any man might. Frost blossomed across the cavern walls. Rhaegal's pupils narrowed to slits of starshine. Then Jon exhaled, a single continuous breath. It roared forth soundless, air so cold it turned the shard's blue flames white, then invisible. The breath shattered the ice heart in a blossom of crystal blooms. Shards exploded outward, yet each froze mid-flight, suspended by the breath's furious stillness, orbiting Jon like moons. The cavern filled with rushing light. Jon's body lifted inches from the floor, cloak snapping. He felt the storm turn, first outward, then curling back like a wave striking cliff. It surged into his chest, a second beating heart of crystal fire. Agony lanced his nerve endings, but layered beneath agony was something indescribable. Music formed of every whispering snowflake since the world's first dawn. He wanted to scream, but no sound would escape. The storm owned his voice. Through haze he saw Daenerys reaching for him, her mouth shaping words his ears could not parse. Bran's silhouette blurred, the ravens perched nearby flaring wings. Arya braced, ready to leap through any darkness to reach him. Sam wept, hugging books like anchors. Jon forced memory forth, just as Bran had warned. He spoke each name in his mind's chamber. Eddard, Catelyn, Benjen, Geralt, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Sam, Daenerys. He pictured Ghost bounding through drifts, pictured laughter in Winterfell's hall, pictured the color of autumn leaves before frost touched them. Each memory flashed, snagging storm threads, weaving them into something human-shaped. The storm roared, but it roared less fiercely. A final pulse radiated from Jon, rippling through the cavern, up the spirals, across spires, into the gray sky. Outside, the dead faltered mid-charge. Iceworms circling above spasmed, keening. The wyvern that had greeted Jon days earlier wheeled, rising, wings seizured by unseen currents. Then silence crashed, heavier than the hush from before. Shards of the heart tinkled to the floor around Jon, no longer suspended. They lay inert, their cobalt veins now stone-dull. Jon collapsed to knees. Color returned to the world. The red flush of Daenerys' cheeks, the dark green of Rhaegal's eyes, Arya's shadow-black hair. Breath gusted from Jon in ragged gasps. White but no longer otherworldly. He lifted trembling hands. Frost no longer crawled along skin. Instead, faint tendrils of steam rose, as though his body held a hearth's glow. The cold remained deep inside, but it coexisted with warmth now, a coiled promise rather than a parasite. Daenerys knelt, seizing him. Her touch felt warm, not painfully hot. Tears streaked her face. He cupped her cheek, marveling that condensation formed beneath his thumb, not frost. Sam sobbed openly, glasses fogging. "You did it. The Codex said if the shard breaks, the second long night can never rise again." Bran opened his eyes. They were still icy pools, but relief glimmered. The heart is dust. Yet winter lives in you, tempered. Arya sheathed her dagger. Better inside someone with a stark spine than buried where any fool can trip over it. Jon managed a breathless chuckle. "I feel free," Rhaegal bellowed, filling the cavern with rolling thunder. Green fire spiraled above him in twisting ribbons, but it did not scorch. Instead, it painted the walls with leaping shadows of dragons and deer wolves dancing side by side. From above, faint cheers drifted. First free folk war whoops, then northern shouts, then Vale war horns. Tyrion's small voice carried faintly. "Somebody tell me the storm's gone, or serve me another skin of wine." Daenerys helped Jon to his feet. He stood, legs newborn, shaky but strong. The cold inside no longer bit. It steadied, pulsed, balanced. For the first time since the Night King fell, Jon felt every part of himself align. Stark and Targaryen, fire and ice, boy and king. They retraced their path up the spiral. Where blue flames had hung frozen, only warm trickles of water now dripped. The tower itself seemed to sigh, ancient walls shedding centuries of rime. Outside, the spire forest glittered under a shy sun pushing through clouds. Gone was the unnatural hush. Ravens cawed, wind rattled ice branches, men laughed and wept. Yet pockets of dead still lurked, robbed of guidance but vicious. The living pressed them, and the battle turned swiftly. For the Whites' coordination had fractured like the heart. Arya led defenders in lightning forays, Gendry's hammer pulping skulls. Rhaegal seared swaths of stragglers with emerald flame that now burned true once more. Even the stray wyvern landed beside Jon, bowing low before lumbering into sky. Its presence more sentinel than threat. When the field lay quiet, Tyrion hobbled to Jon, cheeks red and cold. "Well, you look terrible. Which is to say you look alive." Jon laughed. A sound unburdened, deep. "Ay." Daenerys joined him, hand at his elbow. Snowflakes fell but melted on contact with his cloak. Tyrion eyed the phenomenon. A Stark who makes snow vanish. Unnatural, but I'll take it. The army broke camp that afternoon, turning south. They left the tower standing, but its power guttered. Spires drooped, edges dull, some collapsing into harmless heaps. Jon found one shard from the heart, palm-sized, still faintly glowing. He offered it to Gendry. "Forge something." His voice held new resonance, like wood hollowed and tuned. "A token that reminds us winter can be beaten." Gendry cradled the shard with reverence. "I'll craft a crown or a cup, but only if you promise to drink from it." Jon smiled. Wine tastes best slightly chilled. They marched in stages. Spirits light despite bone-deep weariness. Along the way they met small bands of free folk who joined, no longer fleeing but seeking stories. Word spread beyond the Kill Road that the King of Winter had slain winter itself. Songs took root, wild and contradictory. Some said Jon harnessed dragons made of frozen moonlight. Others claimed he married a queen of fire beneath an ice cathedral. A few swore he walked into death's heart and returned with its own soul caged in ribs. Jon cared little for the tales, save one thing. None portrayed him as monster. Wherever they paused, children approached him, offering wooden direwolves or shells etched with dragon wings. He knelt, warmth in his palms melting frost from their mittens, and told them to guard their fires well, for winter would still come each year, but light would always follow so long as hearts remembered kindness. On the 12th day, they sighted Winterfell's towers, flags whipping in sharp wind. Bells rang Sansa's doing. She greeted them at the gate, cloak billowing black, eyes misting. She touched Jon's face, startled at its gentle warmth. Arya burst into laughter seldom heard, and Bran watched, smile whisper thin but real. That evening the great hall brimmed. Tables groaned under elk haunch, lingonberry pies, trenchers of root stew. Gendry presented the shard he had forged, now a slender dagger with a rippling frostglass core hugged by Valyrian steel. He laid it before Jon and Daenerys. "Winter can be beaten," he said, "but let us remember its lessons." Daenerys lifted the dagger. Its edge glimmered pale blue. A dagger of unity. She offered it to Jon. "Starks guard the north. Targaryens guide the realms of men. Together we ensure storms break around us, not through us." Jon accepted, sliding it behind his belt. He raised a horn of mead. "To the living," he called, voice echoing like distant thunder rolling away forever. "To the living!" The hall roared back. Later, when torches guttered low, and revelers slumped in hay-strewn corners, Jon and Daenerys slipped into the godswood. Snow-dusted branches, but none gathered on Jon's shoulders. Before the heart tree they clasped hands, bark sighed beneath residual heat. Jon felt the cold rest quietly beneath his ribs, a loyal sentinel. He traced lines down Dany's palm. "I feel both lighter and heavier," he murmured. "That is balance," she said. He chuckled. "I always thought balance boring. Only for those who never lose it." She tugged him close, lips claiming his. Heat uncoiled, met coolness, sparked something new between them that was neither flame nor frost, but possibility. Above, the heart tree's red leaves rustled, shaken not by wind, but by passage of something unseen and benevolent. No frost filmed its tears. Sap ran warm again, streaking bark in dark rivulets that smelled faintly of resin and dawn. Jon rested against the trunk, holding Daenerys while Ghost curled at their feet, eyes glowing content. Stars emerged, bright pinpricks on velvet sky. Jon thought of the path behind and the uncharted years ahead. He felt the world spin. Small, fragile, precious. He pressed Daenerys' hand to his chest, where two hearts now beat in patient accord. One of flesh, one of tempered winter. Each echoed the other, twin drums promising that when storms rose, they would not end the world, they would shape it anew. Far to the north, unseen, lonely ice worms soared through newborn skies, free of chains old as legend, their songs drifting across aurora-woven darkness, celebrating the breath that had broken their bondage and pledged them to dawn. Oh, Kay. Morning seeped into Winterfell like honey into warm bread. Slow and golden, touching lintels, banners, even the soot-blackened rafters, with a tenderness the keep had not felt in living memory. Jon woke to a hush, broken only by the muffled crunch of snow sliding from slate and the faint hiss of embers breathing their last in the hearth. Daenerys lay half-draped across his chest. Silver hair cascading over the scar that arrowed from shoulder to sternum. Her breath feather-soft on the skin warmed by two hearts. Outside, Ghost prowled the corridor, claws tapping a lazy cadence. Whenever the dire wolf passed the doorsill, a drift of snowflakes hissed and vanished, the wood tasting steam for a heartbeat before settling. Jon turned silently, brushing strands from Daenerys' forehead. Even in sleep she clutched at dreams, fingers curling in half-remembered battle. But where once fire flickered beneath her lids, he saw now a soft heat, the calm glow of coals at rest. He kissed the corner of her mouth and eased from the furs. The floor, once bitten by cold, hard enough to sear flesh, felt temperate. Frost had learned its place around him, no longer predator but companion. As he dressed, he sensed it swirl to meet him, subtle as breath, as if eager for purpose. In the corridor, Sansa stood wrapped in a sable cloak, dark hair braided with crimson silk. She looked him over with sisterly scrutiny. "You missed first bell," she said, though the warmth in her voice betrayed relief. "The lords gather in the solar. They're arguing already." "Over what?" Jon tightened a gauntlet. "Who you are," she answered gently. "Or rather, what you've become." Jon sighed. "I'm still Jon. Perhaps." She laid a hand on his forearm, cool, neither frostbitten nor singed. "But they need to hear that from you, not from songs." They walked together through passages scented with juniper smoke and fresh pine strewn by stewards across flagstones. Jon felt eyes follow. Servants, guards, the orphan girls sweeping stairwells. Where once fear colored their glances, fear of the cold phantom king, now he met tentative smiles. Children waved, cheeks rosy. Snow melted off their mittens when they passed him, and they laughed at the marvel. In the solar, the council waited. Tyrion by the fire poking at logs, Davos polishing a cup as if it were strategy, Brienne standing sentinel behind Sansa's chair, Gendry breathless from a forge that never slept, Samwell yards of parchment spilling from his lap, Tormund sprawled on a bench gnawing cured elk, and Bran, of course, still and silent beneath the wide window where ravens cluttered the sill. Daenerys joined soon after, braiding her hair as she entered, Rhaegal's low rumble vibrating the courtyard outside. Tyrion lifted his chin. "Good. Both monarchs present." Let us begin, before Tormund turns the council table into kindling. Ben day. Tormund pounded a fist, bread crusts scattering. Better kindling than talk that never ends. Jon pulled a stool, the wood cool under his palms. Speak plain, Tyrion. Plain then, the dwarf said. The seven kingdoms lie shattered. King's Landing is rubble and ash. Storm's End holds against bandits, but no lord wears its crown. Riverrun squabbles. Dorne waits behind desert walls, uncertain whether winter truly broke. And the Reach. Well, grain rots in fields because no levy stands to harvest it. We have an empire of ghosts. Someone must rule what's left, and offer proof this peace is more than rumor. Ben and now. Daenerys folded arms. Then we sail south. Show them living dragons and a king who calms storms. They will believe. Sam shook his head. Others will see monsters. You know how small folk mutter. If summer fails to come on schedule, they'll blame magic. And after all they've endured, magic in royal veins may frighten them more than a hungry winter ever could. Davos scratched the edge of his beard. Whispers already reach White Harbor. Stories that queen and king command winter and fire both. That they toy with seasons. Some hail it. Others pray against abomination. Mendri. Sansa's gaze rested on Jon. Fears fester in silence. Speak to them. I will, Jon said. But words from a distant throne ring hollow. They need deeds. Gendry cleared his throat, surprising himself. Then rebuild something visible. Roads, mills, the wall. Let their hands feel the mortar you lay. Jon nodded. We start here. Winterfell will send carpenters. Seed grain, healers. We'll ask the Riverlands what they require, not tell them. And when snow thaws, we ride south. No banners for conquest, just wagons of timber and stone and... He glanced at Daenerys, dragons to thaw frozen ports. Tormund thumped approval. Building beats burning. Bran finally spoke, the voice of leaves stirring in dream. Not all will greet you with gratitude. The storm is gone, but its memory lingers in men's hearts. There are those who worship that memory, who crave the power you took. They gather on islands of broken ice, and one beneath a black sigil in the Dornish wastes. They call themselves Frostborn. Sam shuffled parchment. I read mention last night. Cultists who believe the Night King was a savior, delivering humanity from pain by ending life. Madness. Tyrion snorted. Madness spreads easier than wheat. Jon straightened. Then we'll pluck it root and stalk. Where are they? Bran's gaze clouded. Northwest, on a frozen archipelago once called the Fingers of Frost. And south at Vathus Oasis, where sand and salt taste of old sorcery. Daenerys' lips tightened. Two fronts. We divide. He caught her hand. Not yet. Winterfell first. We plant hope before we chase shadows. Brienne bowed her head. A wise order. Swords cannot harvest crops. Tyrion raised a cup. To boots that build as well as march. They spent the day drafting ledgers, assigning wagons, debating grain ratios. Jon's mind drifted off into open sky. Each time, frost flickered along quills and candle stubs, until he reeled himself back with a silent recitation of names. At dusk, as lords filed out to supper, Bran wheeled near. You balance well, the boy said, eyes half raven. But balance is a blade. Stay centered or bleed. Jon smiled ruefully. Your riddles haven't softened. One day, they will sound like warmth. Bran's pupils focused as if glimpsing that day. Someone comes tonight who will shift your song. Before Jon could ask, ravens scattered from the sill in a black gust. Bran rolled away. Moonlit fog curled across the training yard when Jon stepped out hours later, longing for space. Steel clattered where unsullied sparred by torchlight. Their disciplined grunts mingled with free folk laughter near the gates. Ghost padded ahead, tail wagging as though scenting old friends. A rider emerged from the mist. Tall, hooded cloak of smoked elk hide, shimmering with frost. Ghost halted, uncertain. Jon lifted a hand. Friend or foe? The figure dismounted. a woman's grace in the swing of a leg. Though her armor glinted like glacier glass, she pushed back the hood, revealing hair white as sea foam, skin a dusky olive, eyes the pale turquoise of glacier melt. Around her neck dangled a medallion, a crescent of black ice bound in silver. "I am Selene of the Frostborn," she said, voice melodic but edged. "I come to parley." Guards tensed, steel rasped. Jon motioned them back and stepped forward until the yard's lone brazier guttered between them. "Parley for what?" "The Frostborn gather power that belongs to the living." Selene tilted her head. "Power belongs to no one. It flows, choosing vessels. Once it chose you, it can choose others. It chose me because I slew its master and tempered it with names of love." "Love," she echoed, tasting it like wine. "A fleeting torch in a storm." He met her gaze. Frost shimmered on her lashes, yet she breathed fog like anyone alive. "What do you want?" "An invitation. Aegon Targaryen, Stark Totka. Walk our path. Learn what the cold truly offers. A world without hunger, without pain, where memory sleeps quiet under soothing snow." "Then?" Jon's stomach tightened. "Memory is pain, yes, but it makes us human." "Humanity," Selene said, "forged swords and crowns and burned cities. We offer an end to such grief, and end to life. A metamorphosis. Not death, only stillness." She extended a hand. On her palm lay a shard of black ice flickering with faint cobalt veins. "The heart splinter. You shattered it, pieces flew farther than you know. This fragment found us. Accept it back, and feel what we feel. Peace." "Then the wine nearer." The shard hummed, attuned to the residual heart inside him. Jon felt it tug like a forgotten melody, promising rest. He inhaled. Warmth swirled. Daenerys' laughter on a wind-swept parapet. Arya's grin after besting a guard. Sansa's iron wool cloaked in velvet courtesy. The tug dulled. He exhaled. Frost and warmth mingling. "I will not surrender living breath for stillness," he said. Selene's eyes narrowed. Not anger but curiosity. "Then the Frostborn will come for you, to reclaim what you deny. We shall meet again." Jon curled a fist. "Leave Winterfell alive only if you promise no harm to my people." "I crossed your wards unharmed." She smiled. "I leave them unharmed. A courtesy from death to life." She turned, swung onto her horse. Ghost barked, but did not chase. The beast sensed no malice, only chill. Selene vanished into fog, hoofprints filling instantly with frost flowers. Jon breathed until his pulse settled. The shard's distant pull remained, a thread drawn tight across unseen expanses. He strode to the godswood where branches creaked under snow's new weight. The heart tree listened as he recited names, adding one he had held at bay since Isahome. Rhaella, Daenerys' mother, burned by ambition, unwept by daughter. He spoke it, and warmth flooded limbs, steadying. Snowflakes melted on his cheeks. Balance restored. For now. Weeks unfolded. Slow as sap, but sure as sunrise. Winterfell transformed into a foundry of renewal. Under Gendry's oversight, the forges sang day and night, fashioning spades, wagon axles, hinges, new plows edged with frost glass hardened by dragonflame. A marriage of elements none had dared. Rhaegal perched on the old tower when not ferrying timbers from Wolfswood clearings, sleighs slung beneath his talons. People watched a dragon serve lumberjacks and felt fear soften into wonder. Daenerys took to the skies at dawn, scouting thaw lines, tracing river routes to gauge spring floods. She landed at dusk with cheeks burnt copper by sun glittering off ice, bringing news of hamlets requiring seed or sawbones. Her council grew. Old Nain's grandniece to inventory food stores, a maester from Old Town dispatched despite Citadel grumbles to study frost-forged steel. 2 wildling wise women daring Citadel corridors to share poultices and ghost stories that made night watchmen listen wide-eyed. Jon divided his hours between hammer and haul. One moment hauling stone blocks to raise a new infirmary wing, sweat steaming on a chest that never chilled. The next arbitrating land disputes between old Karstark retainers and recently settled free folk. He discovered words weighed now not by volume but by cadence. When he spoke calming, the air cooled pleasantly. Temper hot tempers. When he spoke stern, torches flared bright, shadows shrinking. People began calling him Stormless, because where he walked storms seemed to pause, confused. Yet balance remained a blade's edge. Some nights dreams returned. The black ice plain, the figure mirroring his form. Its eyes voids of tranquil night. It never advanced, never retreated, only watched. In these dreams, Jon heard Sellen's voice weaving through distant gusts. Come, put down the weight, join the stillness. Each time he woke drenched, bed furs crusted with frost that melted into rivulets. Daenerys knew without asking. She slid beside him, pressing warm skin to his back until tremors eased. More than once she whispered of leaving Winterfell for Dragonstone's cliffs, of warm salt spray where cold might loosen its claws. He promised travel when roads cleared. For now, the North needed them. Each promise tasted of salt tears unshed. Spring's first dawn burst 2 months after Isahome, an equinox early and shy. But the sun climbed unabashed, chiseling away at snowbanks so swiftly rivers groaned under sudden swell. Winterfell's bells warned of flood. Villagers scrambled to reinforce dikes with frost glass stakes Jon drove single-handed, each blow cracking sludge like rotten bark. Rhaegal strafed river ice with gentle flame, carving channels to guide water away. Still, fields became lakes in a day. In that chaos news arrived. A frostborn host marched south from the fingers of frost, riding on bone sleds drawn by reindeer shorn of flesh yet moving, skeletal hooves beating drums of permafrost. Scouts swore Sellen's crest flashed above, a crescent of black ice encircling 3 tiers of blue flame. Council convened in bitter urgency. Tyrion sketched crude maps on ale-stained parchment. Davos muttered sailors' laments. Sansa met each worry with measured command. But worry she did, for their granaries were half empty from Charity to southern reaches. Daenerys slammed palms on the table. We meet them far north of Winterfell. Crush the threat before it roots Stauch too. Tormund bellowed delight. A true fight at last. Jon frowned. I felt their power the night Selene came. It gathers like fog, hiding knives. I won't march blindly. Ben Nawan. Bran's voice flowed, soft. They seek the shard within you. Draw them where your balance is strongest. Sam pored over his endless pages. Craster's keep stands ruined, but the ground there is roiling peat warmed by hot springs. If Jon channels winter amid that heat, he might dilute their sorcery. Gendry nodded. And fire. I can rig trench lines, fill them with lamp oil. Rhaegal lights the fuse. Plans crystallized, then soared. Assemble a force, not massive but sharp. Unsullied phalanx, Vale Knights, free folk archers. Move swift along the King's Road turned riverbed, ghost across Nightfort ruins, cut west to Craster's Valley whose steam vents curled like dragon breath year-round. 3 days, they loaded wagons. Daenerys flew ahead on Rhaegal to scout passes. On the dawn of the 4th, Jon spoke farewell to Winterfell. Cloak billowing half steam, half snow. Sansa kissed his cheek, pressing a blue winter rose to his vest. Come back, Stormless, she murmured. He twisted the stem behind his buckle. And sunlit. Bran raised 2 fingers in a gesture old as children's caves. Remember memory, he said. Jon promised. They rode, hooves splashing through meltwater. Tormund led free folk chants. Unsullied marched silent, helms reflecting cloud fleets. In the distance, ice worms soared, no longer enslaved but watchful. Arcs of pale sky intersecting Rhaegal's green shadow. Jon sensed them, nodding thanks. Near dusk of the 2nd day, Daenerys returned bearing grim tidings. The Frostborn advanced faster than predicted, sleds biting crust, necromancers urging winds with staffs of bone. Selene rode a stallion woven of smoke. At her back creaked a cage of frozen iron carrying a bound creature Jon recognized from nightmares. The figure of ice wearing his face. He felt a pull so violent, he reeled in the saddle. Daenerys steadied him. Across the low fields wind scoured, tasting of silent tundra. "They bring the reflection," he gasped. Tyrion stared. "You're what?" "My echo in the heart," Jon explained. Voice raw to what? "They shaped what splinter remained into something wearing my form. If that figure meets me, it can mirror my balance. Perhaps even tip it. And now?" Daenerys' eyes flamed outrage. "Then we break their mirror before they can set it before you." Night swallowed the army. Stars glimmered in puddles along broken road, each ripple a galaxy undone. Jon pitched his tent but found no rest. Frost and warmth wove inside like dueling serpents. Outside, the reflection's presence approached step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. He rose hours before dawn, stepping into fog lit by half moon. On the ridge stood Selene, alone, arms loose at sides. The cage behind her glowed faint cobalt. Within, the Ice Twin knelt, unseen face downward. Jon drew Longclaw. "No more parley." Selene inclined her head. "I offer a gift, not war." She gestured, and the cage dissolved into whirling snow that danced away. The twin rose. It was him. Height, scars, even the memory of breath's cadence. But its eyes housed galaxies frozen mid-spin. Its lips formed no words. It stepped forward. Jon's core lurched, an urge to merge, end the strain of balance by sharing burden. He held his ground, reciting names. Frost hissed under boots. Warmth rose inside. Selene watched, fascinated. "Embrace your reflection. In union you ascend beyond hunger, beyond loss." Jon watched the twin mimic each breath. He sensed its emptiness, a vessel ready to hold storm untempered. "No," he said softly. He raised a palm. Frost spiraled outward, meeting the twin's own swirl. Two storms clashed, hissed, intertwined like wrestlers. Yet his carried warmth threads, golden filaments gliding along eddies, seeding cracks in the mirror's weave. The twin's arm thrust toward his chest. Jon pivoted, catching the limb with Frostglass gauntlet. A watt. He bent the joint, and warmth pulsed, spreading hairline fissures through the twin's silica flesh. The mirror hissed, eyes flickering, cracks branching across cheekbones. Selene's breath hitched, first crack in her calm. She lifted the heart splinter. "I can make it whole again." "Share it." Jon shook his head. "He is not me. He is absence thirsting to be filled." With a cry, part rage, part plea, Selene dashed the splinter to the ground. Cobalt fire erupted, spiraling into Twin and Jon both. He felt the surge, a wave of ice hot as molten silver, and thrust his memories like shields. Ned's quiet voice, Gerta's laugh in a cave, Daenerys singing a lullaby to a dying soldier. The surge met warmth, hissed, and parted. The twin screamed a silent shatter. Cracks bloomed, blossoming into fractal frost flowers, until its form burst in a million flakes, swirling upward, dissolving into dawn light. Selene staggered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You kill peace. I choose life," Jon said. "Peace without heart is silence. I refuse silence." He extended a hand. "You can choose too." She backed away, grief or fury twisting features. "We will meet in another winter." She vanished amidst swirling snow, leaving only hoofprints that melted as dawn flared. Jon exhaled, bone-deep weary. Ghost nudged his palm. Warmth flowed into fur. In the violet east, sunrise blazed undaunted by the night's duel. Battle erupted that afternoon in Craster's steaming valley. Frostborn sleds hurtling down slopes, skeletal reindeer spraying shards, unsullied shields locking in glinting phalanx, free folk archers loosing barbed obsidian that shattered wraith helmets. Tyrion manned signal horns while Gendry's trenches of lamp oil waited spark. When Selene's main host struck, Jon stood at the valley's cusp, dragon-scale mail gleaming half-light. Within him, Storms flexed but obeyed. He raised Longclaw. Frost rippled along the sword's fuller, but filaments of amber warmth danced between. He gave the order. Rhaegal roared overhead, green flame cascading into trenches. Oil whooshed, lines of searing brightness cutting the valley like molten rivers. Steam exploded upward where snow met fire. Selene advanced atop her smoke, stallion, staff of rib bone, levitating shards of night-dark ice. She thrust. Spears of frozen wind sliced through unsullied ranks, freezing limbs. Jon answered with a sweep of his blade, sending a ribbon of warming frost that thawed soldiers and shattered spears mid-flight. Then twin storms met. Hers, cold absolute. His, balance incarnate. They clashed overhead in aurora arcs, crackling like heaven's forge. Men and whites alike paused beneath that cataclysm of color. Steam vents burst around them, geysers of Earth's breath. Jon harnessed the rising heat, weaving it through frost streams into luminous spiral that engulfed Selene. Her scream echoed as frost melted from her armor, only to refreeze, trapping limbs like amber around flies. She fought, cracking ice, but each effort met another coil of tempered storm until she stood encased, a statue of sorrow and longing. The whites faltered, puppet strings cut. Reindeer skeletons collapsed into brittle heaps. Cultists dropped staves, staring in horror made human again as blue flames guttered in their veins. Without the shard's echo, they were merely mortals lost. Faces streaked by tears, thawing in sudden heat. Jon lowered Longclaw. Silence fell but the hiss of hot springs and distant groans of thawing ice. He approached the prison of frostglass. Selene's eyes watched him through translucent veneer. No hatred now, only weariness. He touched the casing. Warmth radiated. Ice melted, running in rivulets. She sagged to knees, shaking. He offered a hand. After a heartbeat she took it, fingers trembling. Her eyes darkened from turquoise to human green as whatever enchantment sustained the Frostborn drained away. He lifted her gently. You still live. Choose. Tears welled. I don't know how. Then learn with us. He gestured at the field. Unsullied helping former cultists to feet. Free folk hauling wounded from snow. Rhaegal landing with wing beats scattering steam like rainbows. We mend. Selene looked to the sky where ice worms circled gleaming arcs. Free. Will the cold forgive? The cold is inside me, Jon said softly. And I forgive. She closed her eyes, nodding. They returned to Winterfell bearing wounded and wary prisoners. Sansa organized infirmaries. Sam directed novices to copy healing recipes from wildling sages side by side with Maester scrolls. Tormund supervised carving of a shared hall, where free folk and Southron refugees might break bread, roaring, "We build a bigger wall around the heart, not between people." Selene remained in guest quarters overlooking the Godswood, wrapped in borrowed furs, learning to sleep without murmurs of stillness. She spoke rarely, but sometimes Jon saw her watching snow melt on sill, with curious sadness, as though new world light dazzled eyes, unused to sunrise. Daenerys found her one dusk. They talked long. After, Selene ventured among small folk. Helping dig new irrigation ditches along floodplain. When children shivered, she warmed hands at small braziers and smiled, as if fire's edge no longer cut. Summer advanced in earnest. Crocuses knifed through snow. Wind carried hum of bees braving cool air for first nectar. Under Bran's quiet counsel, Jon dispatched envoys south. Davos to Storm's End with promises of seed and masons. Tyrion to Riverlands where a Tully cousin rallied peasants. Brian to King's Landing, still half ruined to find survivors needing shelter. Gendry, newly legitimized by unanimous northern decree, to forge alliances with smith guilds craving his frost glass techniques. Word fluttered across Westeros. Storms receded. Snows melted weeks early. Fields drank thaw in greedy gulps. Upon such fertile rumor common folk traveled north, seeking gates where dragons flew and winter's king summoned gentle rains. Winterfell swelled like hive. Sansa orchestrated with regal calm, erecting new timbered dormitories, expanding breweries, conscripting restless bards to teach children letters between sets of songs about fire and ice walks. One evening, as carpenters hammered under dragon-lit skies, Bran summoned Jon and Daenerys. They gathered in the tower's high chamber, moonlight pooling on stone slate. "Magic recalibrates," Bran said. "The wall once balanced forces. Now you do. Yet one more tether remains unsettled. Beyond the sea, in Valyria's smoking bones, pulses a fragment of the old doom. The Fireborn mirroring Frostborn. They stir, sensing winter's power now tempered, but not enslaved. If they rise unbalanced, ash may answer ice." Simshar. Daenerys stiffened. "Valyria is a grave. Graves sometimes birth flowers," Bran murmured. "Or ghosts." Jon met her gaze. "We go. Together. Temper fire as we tempered winter." She smiled, fierce and tender. "Dragonfire awaits a dragon." Rhaegal rumbled outside as if eavesdropping. Ghost barked below. Selene, standing quietly in doorway, bowed head. "If you face flame, I will serve Frost's harmony." Jon laid a hand on her shoulder. "Then come." They formed a small company. Jon, Daenerys, Selene, Arya, who refused to be left behind, Sam with maps of shattered peninsulas, and Gendry delivering prototype ship fittings forged of dragon-steeled ice that stayed cool even in blast furnace heat. The voyage would test elements, hearts, and worlds unseen. On departure day, Winterfell's battlements thronged. Sansa hugged Jon tight, whispered, "Stormless." He kissed Bran's brow. Tormund slapped Jon's back so hard, frost puffed from cloak seams. Tyrion pressed a skin of arbor gold into Jon's hand. "Drink when ash darkens hope." Rhaegal crouched in the courtyard, colossal sails blotting a sun softened to peach. Jon mounted first, iceworms banked overhead awaiting signal. Daenerys climbed behind, hands sliding around his waist. Selene seated herself on a saddle woven between ridges, eyes closing to memorize vibration of living heat beneath scales. Arya perched forward, dagger tucked, grin wild. Gendry signaled the gates. Trumpets of horn and bone blared. Rhaegal leapt skyward, wind roaring past wings. Ghost howled, a note that braided sorrow and anticipation. Below, Winterfell receded, a living tapestry of stone and wood and hope. Beyond, far horizons shimmered with possibility. Sea sparkling like coins spilled from giant's purse, clouds drifting like pale sails. Jon felt the storm within stir, eager yet calm, balanced by heartbeat of the queen pressed to his spine. He glanced back. Daenerys' eyes reflected both sunlit clouds and the cold glint of challenge. Ahead, iceworms pierced blue vault, weaving escort. He raised Longclaw. Frost and Sunfire ran its edge, twining like lovers. They flew southeast, toward a smoking horizon where dragonkind was born, and where together, they would shape the third great element. Fire tempered by ice, ice warmed by fire, and teach even doom to bend toward living dawn. Behind them, Winterfell's banners waved. The direwolf and the dragon intertwined, its new motto spoken first by a child near the gates, and now shouted by thousands as wings beat overhead. "We live." And in the quiet spaces between the chant, in the thrum of air around a soaring dragon, Jon heard the world answer with a sound like burgeoning spring, the hush of seeds cracking open, of rivers unfreezing, of horizons opening wide enough for both fire and frost, of life stepping from shadow, stormless into an age no song had yet dared imagine. Okay. Spray crowned the prow of the silver serpent as it knifed through twilight waves, her frost-glass figurehead glowing faintly against a sky-bruised violet. Jon stood beside the bowsprit, gloved hands curled around salt-slick rail, breath misting in the sea breeze. Rhaegal soared above the ship, vast wings eclipsing the slivered moon, while 3 iceworms traced spiral escorts, scales glinting like scattered starlight. The dragon's shadow rippled over the deck and painted sailors momentarily green, a living aurora that drew gasps even from free folk hardened by blizzard and blood. They were 10 days out from White Harbor. Following a chart Sam had stitched from fragmented Valyrian logs and whispers dredged from the Citadel's forbidden stacks. Each dawn revealed more open water, more sky unmarred by crosswinds. Each dusk found new constellations rising over the ship's stern, old gods in unfamiliar alignments, as though the world subtly rewrote its cartography around Jean's wake. Below decks, casks of grain and medicinal wine clinked in rhythm with the tide, while in the hold Gendry's new steel cooled beneath damp burlap, its edges shimmering with a pulse that felt half heartbeat, half whispered oath. Jon inhaled brine sharpened by an undercurrent of sulfur carried from far-off smoking crags. The southern sea smelled different from the shivering, infused with life. Kelp tang, unseen blossoms, washed from tropical shores, faint musk of leviathans gliding miles below. For a moment he closed his eyes, surrendering to memory. The snows of Winterfell, clangor of hammers, laughter of children chasing melted puddles. Each recollection steadied the cold core within him, kept its starved silence at bay. Footsteps padded across planks. Soft. Deliberate. Arya settled beside him, wiry frame wrapped in night blue wool. Her hair, cropped shorter for seafaring, whipped about her face. She traced a finger along the rail, letting droplets beat on skin. Still steering dreams, she said, though it was half a question. Less each night, Jon answered. But the sea brings other voices. Ghost growled at the waves 2 nights running. I think he hears them too. Jon smiled. Ghost growls at anything he can't bite. A pause lingered between them, filled by the boom of canvas overhead. How fare the crew? Arya's eyes glinted. Most think this voyage madness. They whisper about the smoking sea. Ships vanish. Men drown without a splash. She met his gaze. But they follow, because they saw you break a storm and free winter's slaves. Sailors gamble on odds, and stormless odds look good. Jon winced at the title. I'm no more stormless than any man. I've only learned to talk to storms. She thrust elbows on the rail, chin in hands. Teach me. First lesson, don't be afraid of quiet. I haven't been since Braavos. She murmured, voice drifting like gulls. Silence is where I find faces. Faces. He studied his sister as Rhaegal's roar rumbled far above. She had worn many visages, danced at death's edge more times than he could fathom. And yet there she was. Shoulders brushing his. Skin warm, heartbeat quick, alive. He rested a hand on her forearm. I'll teach you what I can. A bell clanged amidships. Sellen's signal. Crimson sparks rose from the main deck, where she practiced her new craft, coaxing frost flame shapes between her palms. He and Arya drifted aft. Around Selene a half-circle of sailors watched, fascinated despite wariness. She conjured a palm-sized globe. Fire at its core, ice shells spinning like glass blown by invisible pipes. The globe cracked with a chiming note and dispersed into glittering mist. Sailors applauded. One grinned toothless. Selene inclined her head, eyes seeking Jon across the deck. She approached. Tomorrow, we sight Valyria. Her accent still carried the musical lilt of frostborn tongues, but words warmed daily. Steam plumes marked the horizon, and the birds wheel wide, as if skies taste wrong. Any sign of the Fireborn? Jon asked. Scouts glimpsed silhouettes, ruddy shapes skimming wave crests. Could be mirage, could be them. She folded arms. My dreams carry ash now, not snow. Daenerys descended the companionway, wind teasing silver hair into banners. She wore quilted leathers tinged green by dragon scales, twin daggers tucked at hips. Rhaegal shrieked above, mirroring her arrival. As she joined them, warmth radiated. Beads of frost on Sellen's shoulders vaporizing into steam. Sam charts our final approach, Dany said. Volcanic vents shift coastlines by the hour. We need eyes above. Rhaegal and I will scout before dawn. Jon frowned. You'll not go alone. Her smile challenged him softly. Who said alone? Half the sky belongs to you now. Before dawn's gray hush, they climbed Rhaegal's shoulders, leather harness cinched tight. Selene stayed below to steady the crew's nerves, Arya to coordinate watches, Sam to recalibrate maps by Dragonborn observation. Gendry manned the new ballistae. Frostglass quarrels seated in brass grooves. Ready should hostile wyverns ride thermals. Rhaegal leapt into wind. Sea fell away, sails shrinking to parchment triangles. Horizon widened. To the north, ribbons of ice lagged behind the ice worms. Eastward, red glows flickered beneath waves. Undersea vents boiling salt water into roiling clouds. Far ahead, a smudge-blackened sky and sea alike, a silhouette of mountains clawing steam from their own wounds. Illyria.sol. They swooped lower. Jagged shards of obsidian jutted like ribs through white surf, each wide enough to swallow a galley. Torn banners flapped on sun-bleached masts, rising from shattered hulls half submerged. Ghost fleets trapped in stone embraces. Channels between rocks writhed with serpents of living fire, rivers of magma defying tide. Jon's stomach tightened. The cold inside him recoiled, yet also hummed like tempered steel near furnace. Across his skin, gooseflesh prickled. Daenerys felt it too. He sensed her shiver despite dragon-scale jerkin. Below, gray ruins sprawled across black crust. A city petrified mid-breath. Towers leaned like charred candles. Bridges terminated in mid-air. Streets cracked by fissures venting lime-green smoke. In the central square, a colossus of a dragon reared on hind legs. Wings broken, but talons clasping a sphere of dull obsidian large enough to blot a moon. Cracks glimmered within the orb, as if embers slept there. Dany pointed. The dragon heart. Legends say our ancestors forged it, binding 16 volcanoes in harmony. When doom came, heart shattered, volcanoes quarreled. Mendsaw. Jon scanned magma arteries crisscrossing ruins. If fireborn seek power, they'll nest there. Thunder boomed. The colossus's sphere pulsed scarlet. Around its base flickered orange motes. Torches? No, too bright. Jon squinted. People. Scores, maybe hundreds. Circled the statue in layered glass armor glowing from within, each plate etched with serpentine flames, their faces hid behind red-stained helms, shaped like dragon skulls. A roar thicker than any dragon's shook the morning. From behind a collapsed basilica surged a beast wreathed in white fire. A fireworm, scales like molten bronze, wings webbed with sizzling cinders. Ridged spine carried riders. 3 figures, cloaks of shimmering ember. They guided the beast toward the dragon heart, mirroring the ice worms that had bowed to Jon outside Winterfell. Rhaegal's muscles knotted, tail lashing. Jon felt primal challenge coursing through their bond. Wildfire meeting tempered winter. Daenerys leaned close. We land east, behind those ridges. Avoid being drawn into sky duel before we know their measure. Rhaegal banked sharply, veering behind serrated cliffs where obsidian met sea. They settled on a basalt ledge, steaming with mineral vapors. Sulfur stung nostrils. The ground vibrated with subterranean thumps like giants forging anvils below. Jon slid off the saddle, heat licked soles of boots. Frost blossomed where he stepped, sizzling into hissing water that instantly re-evaporated. Balance playing tug-of-war. He drew Longclaw. The blade's edge coiled with both frost and crimson sparks. Even steel can't decide here, he muttered. Daenerys crouched to touch the stone. Moisture fizzed under her fingertips, then cooled. We have until sunset to parley or strike. After that, vents purge again. She nodded at Fisher's weeping orange light. Anything caught on low ground turns to glass. Then we keep to high spires, Jon said. And prey negotiation outpaces geology. They returned to the Silver Serpent, relayed what they'd seen. Sam unrolled scrolls, fingers trembling. Those armors must channel geothermal vents. Fireborn feed off heat, as Frostborn feed off silence. Now, Celine listened, brows knit. If heat births them, perhaps cold can lull them. If not kill, then soothe, as John's warmth soothes my frost. Gendry hefted a new glaive, glass blade glowing faint halcyon. And if soothing fails? John studied the crew. Weariness rimmed their eyes, but resolve burned bright. Then we break another heart, he said. But only if hearts choose dragons' ashes over people's futures. Evening bled across the smoking sea, turning ash clouds violet. Captain Harl set anchor off an obsidian quay collapsed into stair-step terraces. Sailors ferried landing parties over fissures via rope bridges. Ghosts dashed ahead, paws skittering over shards too hot for human flesh, yet cooled to gray under his touch. John, Daenerys, Arya, Celine, Sam, and a handful of unsullied advanced into ruined avenues, where statues of winged lions loomed cracked and eyeless. Heat washed over them in gusts. John countered with subtle frosts trailing his boots, leaving steaming footprints that resealed into polished black glass. As they approached the Dragonheart Square, chanted hymns rolled through arches, harsh syllables, syncopated stomps. Torches flickered up tiered colonnades where fireborn acolytes knelt, palms extended toward the sphere. The fireworm perched on a fractured aqueduct, coils draped like living lava dat. Its riders dismounted, helms retracting into fan-like collars that pulsed ruby. The foremost rider was tall, amber-skinned, eyes radiant yellow. He raised a staff forged of twisted meteoric iron, capped by a living core of flame. "Hail, storm-tempered," he called, voice resonant as temple gongs. "The living ash salutes the living frost." John stepped forward, Longclaw at rest. "I am John of House Stark, tempered by ice and memory. This is Daenerys Stormborn, first of her name, tempered by dragonfire and mercy. We come to offer balance, not war." Murmurs rippled through ranked acolytes. A spark leaped from fissure to fissure, linking them in incandescent chain. The rider descended broken steps in measured grace. "I am Kalar San, voice of the flame, chosen to bear heat's second heart. We know of your deeds, Ice King. You tamed the storm, but storms return. Fire endures." "Benchao." Daenerys' gaze flared. "Fire burned this empire to cinders. It does not endure." "People do." "People," Kalar echoed, almost wistful. "They flicker like sparks. Ash remembers long after bones." He twirled staff in lazy arc. Cinders trailed like comet tail. "We would give them permanence, turn flesh to ember, pain to warm silence." Celine stepped past John, cloak snapping. "Silence is neither warm nor cold, it is void. Frostborn learned this. Will you?" Kalar observed her with curious tilt. "The renegade of snow." He touched a glowing gauntlet to his brow. "We sensed your thaw. Do you regret leaving Hush?" "I regret believing it peace," she answered. The fireworm's eyes fixed on John with predator stillness. He felt heat surge, sweat beading before frost cooled his pores. Kalar gestured to the sphere. "This Dragonheart fragment sustains currents that birthed Valyria. Reforged, it can cradle the world in gentle fire. No more hunger, no more cold." His gaze lingered on Daenerys. "You bear dragon's blood. Claim your inheritance. Join us, wield the heart beside me. Fire and frost could end torment forever." "Damned show." Daenerys stepped closer to John. "One pace, deliberate. Torment ends when we face pain, not when we smother it. You offer ease, not life." She scanned acolytes. "Choose life." A hush, punctuated by bubbles bursting in distant vents. Then Kalar lowered staff. "Then you choose ash." He slammed the butt into basalt. Fissures erupted. Pillars of flame spiraled skyward. Acolytes' armors flared, veins glowing insidious orange. The Dragonheart sphere split along old cracks, lashes of magma spitting outward. A molten glob splashed near Sam. Frost from Jones' wave flash cooled it into obsidian sculpture mid-air. Battle erupted. Unsullied lunged. Shields raised. Fireborn acolytes hurled javelins tip glowing white. Upon impact, shards exploded into liquid glass droplets that fused armor seams. Arya leapt among columns, blades flashing, targeting gauntlet joints where heat concentrated. Selene thrust palms. Whorls of cooling haze spiraled, dousing flame arcs long enough for Gendry's glaive to cleave shoulders. Kalar advanced on Jon, staff leaving footprints of fire that glassed ground. Longclaw met the staff with chime like cathedral bells. The clash birthed geysers of steam as Frost halted molten metal. "See?" Kalar hissed through teeth bared. "We are mirror. Together, perfect." "Mirrors crack," Jon replied. He drove elbow into Kalar's helm. Frost blossomed, spidering hairline fissures. Kalar retaliated with gout of white-hot flame. Jon swirled his cloak, air snapping cold, redirecting torrent into the sky where ice worms descended, inhaling fire as though feeding. Meanwhile, Daenerys faced the Dragonheart shards. They hovered above the square, spinning, tethered by cables of lava. She stretched both hands. Rhaegal shrieked overhead, diving. Green flame engulfed one shard, smothering red glow in emerald jaws. She turned to the next, but magma whips struck, coiling about her waist, searing leather. She screamed, knees buckling. Jon whipped around, heart lurching, but Kalar's staff jammed across his collarbone, pinning him. "Choose," Kalar roared. "Her life for the world's peace." Rage and dread collided with cold calm. Jon pushed inward, summoning memory. Ygritte's hair lit by cave torches. Bran's raven eyes. Sansa's rose on his buckle now charred by sparks. Daenerys' laugh echoing off frosted hulls. The storm welled, not of cold alone, but of every warmth life had given. He exhaled through clenched teeth, releasing swirl that shimmered argent shot with gold. Frost locked onto Kalar's staff, overran its core flame, shattering it into brittle shards. Jon pivoted, driving pommel into Kalar's breastplate. The rider gasped, arcs of steam curling from gauntlets as frost and heat warred within. Jon dashed for Daenerys. Selene intercepted a lava whip with frost orb that solidified it mid-coil, snapping it free. She hurled it aside where it burst into harmless glass shards. Jon slid to Dany's side, slashing through remaining tendrils. Steam billowed. Her leather smoked but flesh beneath glowed healthy, healed by dragon blood resilience. Kalar, staggering, raised broken staff halves, flame sputtering. He cast eyes skyward, as if appealing to old gods lingering in volcanic veins. The Dragonheart shards trembled, pulses growing frantic, threatening to shatter into shrapnel of molten wrath. Sam shouted from atop a cracked dais. "The heart's resonance, we must dampen it." He hurled a frostglass baton to Jon. "Strike the central node with balanced force." Fire and ice both. Jon caught the baton. Cool, humming. He locked gaze with Daenerys. Understanding passed without words. Together, they sprinted toward the orb's molten core now visible between shards. A nucleus of smoldering crystallized magma, surface swirling. Rhaegal dived, jaws disgorging flame. Simultaneously an iceworm exhaled plume of sapphire frost. The streams braided mid-air, spiraling into luminous helix that struck the core. Jon and Dany leapt, each driving a weapon. Longclaw and a dragonbone dagger, into the sphere's glowing rind at opposite points. Sound vanished. Light imploded. They found themselves suspended in hung silence where time dripped slow. Before them, the heart no longer raged. It glowed gentle, colors shifting between dawn and dusk. Threads, one of heat, one of cold, wove inside, forming lattice symmetries. A voice, neither male nor female, filled the stillness. Balance or oblivion? The question rippled like a drop in still water, reaching their bones. Jon spoke within the quiet. "Balance, chosen every day," Daenerys added, "and reforged when broken." The heart brightened, then shrank, compacting into a seed of warm light no bigger than a thumbnail. It hovered between them, pulsing. Outside, world's roar returned. Lava cooled to obsidian. Flames died. Vents sighed instead of screaming. Fireborn acolytes faltered, gauntlets dimming. Kalar fell to knees, helm popping free, revealing sweat-slick hair the color of mahogany. His eyes, once gold, now amber subdued. John approached, seed of balanced fire ice cupped between palms. Kalar, will you help grow a world where flame warms, not burns? The man looked up, eyes haunted. I thought ruin mercy. He studied the seed, tears evaporating on cheeks. Teach me to shape. You teach me what fire remembers, John said, extending hand. Kalar hesitated, then accepted, fingers trembling around luminous seed. It pulsed, neither searing nor freezing, but radiating calm. A whisper traveled through gathered fireborn. Armor lights faded then reignited in softer sunrise hues. They lowered weapons. Selene exhaled relief. Arya wiped blood from her blade, expression halfway between respect and disbelief. Sam slumped against column. Spectacles fogged by steam. High above, clouds parted revealing stars, sharpening in heavens cleansed. Rhaegal and the ice worms circled each other, no longer opposed but weaving playful spirals that traced new constellations in the soot-cleared suspense. For 3 days, they worked side by side. Fireborn, frost-forged allies, northern soldiers, unsullied. Free folk, Valyrian ghosts. They redirected vents away from ruins where children of displaced fisherfolk might someday live. They raised stone causeways over magma streams, forging channels that turned lethal rivers into power for forges. Gendry's glaives anchored pulleys. Selene's frost spheres cooled slag into bricks. Kalar's flame staffs tempered them, sealing pores against salt winds. John met Daenerys each dusk at the Colossus's feet. They watched sun sink behind pylons, its orange disk mirrored in basalt pools, now glassed into calm lakes. She rested head on his shoulder, warmth and cool threaded intimately. They spoke little, thank-yous exchanged through gentle touches, shared breaths. On final morning they convened where the Dragonheart once loomed. In its place now sprouted a tree. No taller than a man, yet leaves shimmered like hammered copper rimmed with hoarfrost, trunk banded red as ember. The seed had rooted between layers of frozen obsidian and warm sand, drinking both. Sam theorized its roots tapped vents to warm sap, while leaves drew night mists chilled by iceworms drifting overhead. Kalar bowed before the sapling. Let this be redoubt against extremes, he said. Flame without scorch. Snow without sting. John laid a frost-gloved hand to bark. Daenerys placed a warm palm atop his. A tremor tingled, as if the fledgling heart of balance acknowledged them, then settled into content humming. They departed Valyria under twin escorts. Fireworm Neuros, scales now tempered to dull copper, ridden by Kalar and 2 acolytes. And the eldest iceworm, renamed Shiverfire by crew's whimsical vote. The silver serpents sailed between living symbols of fire and frost, drawing spray arcs rainbowed by sunrise. Behind them, Valyria no longer belched ceaseless smoke. Plumes curled but gentler, sky glimpsed in widening fissures. Weeks of voyage north felt like dream walk. At midday they fished under twin dragon shadows. At night Selene shared frostborn lullabies, soft and haunting, while Kalar traded Valyrian verses glowing ember in throat. Arya taught deckhands Braavosi footwork. Sam recorded every tale, ink running out faster than pages. On a dawn laced with gull cries, they sighted Westerosi cliffs. Winterfell banners thundered at half-mast, then soared full as word spread. The Dragon Queen and Storm King returned with flames tamed and frost at peace. Sansa met them at harbor, cloak snapping spring green. Bran waited in wheelchair, eyes bright with quiet triumph. Tyrion tipped a goblet. You left to bend doom and brought home a sapling. Underachiever truly. That night feast fires painted hall rafters. Mead flowed, drums thumped. Selene and Kalar sat amidst freefolk and reachmen, laughter bridging histories. Gendry unveiled new blades forged from Valyrian obsidian and northern frostglass, edges shimmering rose gold, where fire and ice alloy met. Children crowded as Arya performed water dance flourishes with one, its blade whistling meteor arcs that chilled air then warmed it. Jon stood at dais, Daenerys at his side. He raised his hands. Gradual hush fell. He looked over faces. Skarmers, maesters, freed slaves, nobles in simple linen, strangers from seas beyond maps. Hand felt stormless calm, spread like torch glow. We set out fearing doom, he began. We found pain, yes, but also possibility. Fire can temper, frost can preserve. Together they forge worlds. He gestured to Kalar and Selene. Enemies became teachers. Teachers will become stewards. Together, we'll sow seeds that grow in cold and bloom in heat. He paused, watching blue, green, brown eyes glisten. We are bound not by blood, nor banners, nor birth, but by choice to live and help others live. He lifted a cup of spring water drawn from rivers freed by thaw. To choice, he said. To choice, Hall echoed, voices weaving into tapestry of vow. After revelry faded, he and Daenerys slipped into Godswood. Snowdrops and first violets peeked through moss. They walked beneath Hearttree, whose red leaves swayed though no wind stirred. Perhaps shaken by roots sensing distant sapling, sibling in Valeria. They paused before the weirwood's face. Moonlight silvered bark tears. Jon traced a groove. When I first knelt here after Hardhome, I begged for strength to fight winter. Now, I beg wisdom to tend spring. Daenerys interlaced fingers with his. Wisdom is listening. He listened. Nightjars called. Hot springs gurgled under stone. Somewhere a child laughed late, chasing glowworms. Inside, the storm hummed low, anchored by warm tides of memory. Daenerys' breathing matched his. Balance. No longer edge, but river flowing between shores. She rested head on his shoulder. We will falter, she whispered. Fire flares, frost bites. We'll mend, he said. Again and again. Above them, stars wheeled. Somewhere far south, a copper and frost tree drank magma and mist, leaves whispering songs unsung. Somewhere far north, frozen waves lapped tranquil ice islands. Hush no longer hungry. In the wide between, rivers ran free, fields sprouted, forges glowed. Children dreamed. Stormless skies would roil again. Life required weather, but now knew rhythm, not tyranny. And in every hearth, whether flint spark or dragon tongue, in every breath curling white on morning air, echoes of two hearts beat in patient accord. Fire forgiven, frost embraced, promises kept. They stood long after moon set, until dawn bled faint rose against towers. Ghost padded up, nudged their hands. Together they followed him back toward ramparts where new banners stirred. A direwolf twining a dragon, wrapped around a sapling whose leaves were half ember, half snow. The banners caught first light, shimmered, and whispered as wind found them. Their rustle sounded like a single, unbroken word carried across fields and seas alike. Live.